Good morning, everybody. How are we all? Welcome to my studio, Down End Farm Studio. My name is Ali Board, and this is your 10th of November Technique Tuesday. Now, if you're watching live, you are probably watching on my Facebook page, Alison Seaboard Artist, but you might be watching on catch up. So you might be watching over on my YouTube channel, or you might be watching via my blog. No matter whether you are watching me live or whether you are watching me on catch up, you are all astonishingly welcome to the party. Now, what is Technique Tuesday? Technique Tuesday is me broadcasting since the beginning of our first lockdown here in the UK, live from my studio, sharing things that I've been thinking about, projects I've been working on, materials that I've been testing out. But during this second lockdown, what we are calling the November editions, I really wanted to reach out to you just in case you were feeling isolated or your creativity had taken a bit of a nosedive. And so this is just my contribution really to making sure that nobody feels isolated, nobody feels alone, and I'm going to paint a picture from start to finish, and then you will be encouraged to follow along at home. If you would like to know more about it, then please do pop over to my website. The address is coming up on the screen now, and navigate your way to my blog. In the menu, it's just called Ali's blog. You can see the first broadcast that I put out there to do with the November editions about what it was that I'm trying to achieve. And you'll also be able to see last week's version too, which was the toadstool project, a nice simple watercolour project that we covered. So there we have it, alisonseaboard-fineart.co.uk. And then if you want to put it in the URL, you can put /Ali's-blog, ALIS-BLOG. Now, one of the things that I always promise to do is to help you with any isolation issues you might have, or just to be nice and build a community. I try to give everybody a shout out. So if I happen to look down, it's just because in front of me I have my Facebook live stream. And if you're watching on catch up, what I try to do is if anybody has any questions, I try to repeat them and then answer them in the same breath. So let's see who is in the room. Gosh, a lot of you have said good morning already. Let's see if we can make our way through this list. So Leanne, B, Sylvia, good morning Sylvia, Sandy, Ali WT, Jan, Ali D, Jane, Hilary, Pauline, Barbara, Anne, Jean, Linda, Anne B, Jilly, Marion, Sally, Jill, good morning Jill, Debbie, who Jill is also saying good morning to everybody else too, how sweet, Cheryl, Thyra, Steph, Janet, Sharon, Sandy, Gloria, good morning Denise, hello my lovely, Pippa, who is so close to me that I could shout and she'd probably hear me, Linda, Lou, who else have we got? Oh gosh, so many people. Joy, coming in thick and fast. Linda from a dull and misty South Yorkshire. Sun's come out here in Dorset. Hopefully it will make its way up the country. Who else have we got? Val, good morning. You can probably hear me shout as well. And Patricia, Gwenda and Janice. My apologies if I've missed out your name. There's an awful lot of you in the room this morning, and how lovely. Thank you very much for being here. Now, what is it that we're going to cover today? Last week we did toadstools, kept it nice and simple. This week we are going to be looking at a watercolour painting of some fuchsia. Now, this is the photograph that I took myself when I was out and about on my travels, like I do ordinarily. I took this photograph at the beautiful B&B where I was staying, and it occurred to me when I was doing this that it might be useful for you to understand how to simplify a photograph. And then I thought the other thing that we could do is look at some more impressionistic painting techniques, because I know an awful lot of you struggle with those impressionistic painting techniques, and a bit of mark making in there too. I've just seen some more good mornings come in. Alison, good morning. Ruth, what does Chris say? Chris says, morning from a not so sunny Staffordshire, wrestling with a 10-week-old puppy. Well, what a terrible chore for you, Chris. And lots of lovely people. Diane in Scotland, and lots of people commenting on dog sharing. That's really lovely. How sweet. So over on my blog, You will find a copy of this photograph, which you can download absolutely free of charge and absolutely free of copyright. Good morning, Lynn, on the Isle of Arran. How lovely to have you here. Also on my blog, you will find a downloadable version of this, the line drawing, so that you can see how I've simplified things. Now, please don't worry, I will go over all of this, but those two resources are there for you on that blog so that you can download and follow along at home. I wouldn't recommend that you try to follow along with me live, because some of you might have noticed that I have already put the resources up. The only thing I haven't put up yet on the blog is this video that we're filming now. I wouldn't recommend that you paint along because I am going to go quite fast. And when you play it back, I would highly recommend that you watch a little bit, put me on to pause, and then catch up that way. Now, let's go very quickly back to face on, just so that I can say, if you have any questions at all and you're watching live, please do pop them in the comments. Sometimes I forget that I haven't said something, or sometimes I even assume that you might know something, which is a bit rubbish of me, but that's what you guys are there for. Please ask me any questions that you can. I will try to pick them up live during the broadcast, but if I don't, I will go back through later and I will try to answer them for you. So without further ado, good morning, Gwen. Let's take you back to my overhead shot, and you can see my workspace there. I've got my photograph all printed out. I have it drawn out onto my watercolour paper, and I'll talk more about that in just a second. And then I have a whole selection of goodies here. Now, it doesn't matter if you can't match my colours. It doesn't matter if you don't have this little number, which I've got here, which again I will talk more about in a second. You do the very best you can with your materials, because actually it's quite nice to see how somebody else might interpret it. So please don't think the success or the failure of your painting relies on you absolutely duplicating what I have here. But I am just going to take you through it very quickly. I have a ceramic daisy palette here, and I have 4 colours here for my painting. I have quinacridone magenta, that's the one that no one can ever spell or pronounce. I have sap green, it's a pre-mixed green, but it is quite a nice green. I have cobalt blue, and I have translucent grey. Now, these are the SAA brand of watercolours. I would say, in my own personal experience, they are certainly by no means anywhere near the cheap end of the market. They are of a really good quality, but they are not the best pigments around. They fall somewhere in the middle. Now, this is why I like to demonstrate with them, because they do all of the techniques that you would expect, but they don't have too big an impact on your pockets. And if you'd like to know more about those, you can go to the saa.co.uk to find out more. So that's the 4 colours. I have squeezed them out onto my palette, ready to go. Let's just pop those tubes down there. I have putty rubber lurking in the wings. I have my SAA imitation sable brushes. Morning, Joanna. I have a size 10, a size 6 and a size 4. Now, brush sizes are only relative to the range that they're in. So my size 10 might be a little bit different from your size 10. Again, don't really worry about it as long as your brushes have a fairly decent point on them. And I've kind of got a large, a medium and a small. That's a better way of describing them, really. I've got a pot of water here, I have a spray bottle, and then I have this little number down here too, which I'm going to use towards the end of my painting, just simply because I am a mixed media painter, and although we are going to concentrate on watercolours and techniques today, I thought it would be interesting to throw this into the mix. What is this? This is a jar of Pearlex powder. Pearlex is a mica-based powder, so it's got a kind of shimmer to it. You can see it's a rather delicious fuchsia pink. It's actually called magenta, because I am that artist that has to label everything and make sure that I know, looking down at it, which colour is which. So this is the magenta. Now, ordinarily, for those of you who have followed my work previously, you might have seen me mix this in with things. You might have seen me mix it with mediums, all sorts of things, but I'm actually going to use it dry today. And that's what this is for. This is, yes, absolutely, and some bling. We have to have some bling in our lives. This is probably the ladies in the room will recognise this far quicker than the gentlemen in the room. This is an eyeshadow applicator, and I'm going to be using this with the Pearlex. Now, this also gives you a bit of a handy hint to what to do if you don't have Pearlex. Don't worry if you don't have a metallic powder. If you happen to have an eyeshadow lurking somewhere in your stash of eyeshadows, then you can use that as well. Or you might want to crush up a chalk pastel. Or there's all sorts of ways that you can do the technique that I'm going to show you at the end. So it doesn't absolutely need to be Pearlex. If you have Pearlex, all the better. I'm going to put that to one side. That's going to be one of the last things that I do today. So here is my drawing. Now, the line drawing that I have put over on my website for you to download is a simplified version of this, because this was a sketch that I did when I was planning today's demonstration, and I have kind of made it a little bit simpler, but there's absolutely no reason at all why you can't add to it. Now, here's a bit of information. When you get a photograph like this, it's quite tempting to look at it and go, oh, goodness me, I've got lots and lots of flower heads. How am I going to make this one look like it's in front of this one? Now, I've given you the photograph so that you can do all of them if you want to. But I'm very mindful with a demonstration like this, you kind of want me to get to the nitty gritty quite quickly. And so I've simplified it. I have left out pretty much all of the flower heads at the end of my composition. I have certainly left out things that are in the background. What I've concentrated on is this main flower here hanging down, and then I've added a few others. My leaf shapes are very loose. I've tried not to over describe them. I haven't worried about any of them that look a bit peculiar, like that flat one in the background. I haven't worried about all these stems. I haven't tried to exactly copy things. All I have tried to do on my piece of paper is to put my main flower slightly left of centre so that it's not occupying the absolute middle. From a compositional aesthetic point of view, that's not a great thing to do. It doesn't really matter, because if you put a picture mount on it on the end, you can always shift it anyway. But just for the sake of today's demonstration, I have shifted it to the left ever so slightly, and I've got plenty of space. Yes, and B, sprinkle it brusho. Yes, you could use that too. What you will notice is that I've got lots of white paper around my fuchsia head. If you want to paint in a much looser, more impressionistic style, you have to give your painting space, because you do want it to occupy lots of atmosphere. If you do it on too small a piece of paper, and I know paper is expensive, I understand that. However, if you put your subject matter what I call left to right, so if I kind of joined it up to one side and joined it up to the other, that constricts your view of it and it stops that impressionistic quality occurring. So that's why I've left lots of space around it. And what I'm going to do for you is I am going to zoom in ever so slightly so that you get to see my painting in a little bit more close-up detail. Let's just do a bit of camera rearranging. There we go. I think you can probably see that a little bit better, and still see the edge of my palette too. Morning, Rosie, over there in France. Rosie, please don't apologise for being late. It's lovely to have you here. And the lovely Chris as well. Good morning, everybody. So let's get started on this, shall we? I'm going to do a very loose, soft grey background. Why am I doing a very loose, soft grey background? Well, we do have some brickwork in our photograph. You could replicate that if you wanted to, but I'm sure you'll notice on my photograph down here, it is starting to argue with the texture of my flowers. Jean, good morning. So I want it to be just kind of soft, a little bit cold and in the background, and very pale. Now, here's where one of the first impressionistic techniques can help you out. Rather than trying to paint all in between, or masking this out and trying to paint in between all of your flowers, you can make the decision right from the get-go to put colour onto everything. So we're going to do the background, we're going to do some of the leaf shapes, we're going to do some of the flower shapes. We're going to get it done all in one. Then we're going to dry it, and then we're going to pick elements out. That way of making an impressionistic painting is, for me, much more successful than going to what I call paint by numbers, where you paint this little section and this little section and this little section. So please consider that when you do your next impressionistic painting, to paint all of it in one hit, rather than, you know, trying to pick out certain elements. So let's prepare everything so we have it all ready to go. What have we got? So I'm going to need my size 10 brush, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create puddles of colour in my palette so that I have them to pick and mix from. So I'm going to add some colour to that sap green there. I'm going to add, I'm not going to add colour to it, I'm going to add water to it. What am I talking about? Over here, I'm going to add some water to my Quinacridone Magenta. Look at that delicious colour. What's not to like about that? And then I've got a bit of cobalt blue over here, which I've flicked some green in, but that's all right, that doesn't matter. And then some of this lovely translucent grey, which is a very strong colour, just to warn you. If you do purchase it, you don't need an awful lot of it squeezed out onto your palette. So there I have my colours all ready to go. And what I can then do is, rather than procrastinating on my palette, I can get started with painting this in. Now, one of the things that I promised you over on my blog in the techniques that I was going to cover today is I do want to talk about a vignette. So a vignette is a painting that has soft edges. It kind of creates atmosphere. You have something called lost and found, which artists talk about all of the time, where you have a found shape is a shape that has a hard edge, and a lost shape is a shape that kind of disappears into the background. And what we want is a combination of those two things to get that lovely atmosphere. So a vignette is going to be our start. We're going to have soft edges, and then we're going to pick out some shapes later on to give them hard edges. Oh gosh, we have art royalty in the room. Not only do we have Denise Allen, we've got Anita Pounder in the room, we've got Tara as well. Good morning, everybody. So to start off our vignette, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my spray bottle, and I'm going to spray some water around the edges. Can you believe a little bit of Brusho's popped up? Look at that, let's get rid of that. I was using Brusho over the weekend, and it just stays in the atmosphere. So here I've got some water, sort of in an almost kind of horseshoey kind of shape. And what that's going to do is that is going to make sure that when my colour hits the paper, it disperses and diffuses. Now what I do need to do is grab some extra kitchen roll, because I put my kitchen roll under my palette. Now I can't get to it. That was a bit dippy, wasn't it? And the paper that I'm using today is Saunders Waterford, £140, 300 gram. It's a knot surface, so it's a cold pressed surface. And it is extra white or high white, depending on how you like to describe it. So what am I going to do first? I'm going to go straight in to that grey. Oh dear, I'm having one of those days today. It's picked up some nonsense from the palette, so let's move that somewhere else. I thought my palette was clean, clearly not. Right, let's get some of that lovely soft grey in. So I'm going in between my flowers and petals. I'm really trying not to think about it too hard. And what we are definitely employing today is the very highly patented Ali Board slap it on and don't worry about it technique. And the reason that you need to slap it on and not worry about it so much is because the minute you start getting overprotective of it is the minute that your paintings will start to look overworked. Now, I am encouraging my paint to run down the page. Why am I doing that? I'm doing... Jeanette is saying, sorry, late for class, miss. Jeanette, please have a detention and see me after class, would you? Now, what was I saying? I'm allowing it to run down the page so that it gets a bit of a dynamic quality. And also it starts to mirror the stamen coming out of the flowers. So we'll get that grey on. People are asking Jeanette if she has a note to excuse her. That's hilarious. Let's go in with this sap green straight away. it's all very wet and it's running everywhere. Now this is the point I say to people when they come to my classes. This is the brown paper bag moment. Why is it called the brown paper bag moment? Because this is the moment where you start to hyperventilate because colours are running everywhere and you have no control over them. And you start to go, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? My leaves are all running into each other. I tell you what you do is you don't worry about it, okay? It's impressionistic. It needs a bit of life in it. Now let's get some of this cobalt blue into the mix as well. I want to pop some of that into my leaf shapes. That can run into the background if I want it to. And it can also start to come into those flower shapes too. Now my flowers are a little bit on the dry side. I don't mind that because you wait until this quinacridone magenta goes on. Look at that state of loveliness. Isn't that gorgeous? So we'll get that colour on. I'm using the tip of my brush a little bit more now as opposed to all of it. And I can pick colour up with it. I can even spatter some colour in it at this stage if I want to kind of give that illusion that there are other flower shapes going on in the background. And then let's get some of that colour in here on this shape and let's mix up a violet. So that's the quinacridone magenta and a bit of that cobalt blue. You'll see exactly why I chose that colour in a second. Look at that, isn't that delicious? I'm so excited. I get far too excited about my paintings, I really do. And let's put some kind of stem shapes in too. So it's all very fuzzy, it's running everywhere. We could put some of those stamen in because that paper's quite dry there. But the main thing is to enjoy that process. Enjoy it. Now, lots of people are saying that they get tied up with the detail. Now, there's lots of things that you can do to help yourself with the impressionistic part of it. You could wait until this evening and have a really good gin and tonic before you start. That helps tremendously. Or you can get to that point, you know, when you've had a bad day and you think to yourself, oh, I really don't want to paint today. But sometimes you make yourself, I think that's a really good stage for being impressionistic because you care a little bit less about it and you kind of just crack on with it, and usually that's the perfect state of being. People are saying that they like the no control thing, people are saying they like a good spatter. Anne is saying this is the point that she panics. Please don't worry, it is only a piece of paper. As somebody said to me the other day, we are not packing parachutes, it's all good. Now, let me get a bit of this kitchen roll. I've got way too much in my hand. And I'm going to concertina it. And what I'm going to do is use a very light touch on my paper to get a bit of control back with the colours that are all smushing together. There's the official term for it. Sharon Hurst would be proud of me. And then I can use my kitchen roll in slightly more rigid shapes to go back in and lift any areas out that I think aren't particularly working. But actually, I'm quite pleased with it as it is. Now, I need to dry this. Good morning, Sandra. She's saying a bit late to the party. Never too late to one of my parties, Sandra. Barbara is saying, why wait till this evening for the gin and tonic? Barbara, couldn't agree more. And Susan has made a very good suggestion, which is just to leave your glasses off, which is probably why it's working so well for me this morning, because glasses are still on top of my head. Right, I need to give that a good dry. I've got my heat gun just here, so which has got caught in my chair. That's never a good look, is it? So let's give it a bit of a blast. Let your questions come in if you are watching me live. This is the perfect time for me to answer anything. Bear with me for 2 seconds while I just do this. So I'm giving it a kind of a rough dry over the top. If you're doing this at home or if you are following along on catch up, then please do allow a bit more time than I'm going to give it for the drying. Lots of people now sharing their gin and tonic recipes. So I'm going to give this a dry. I'm quite liking the way that we've got a kind of a really found shape in here. We've got hard edge but loving all the lost bits too. So Rosie is saying, glasses off, couple of G&Ts and slosh it on. Rosie, I couldn't agree more. Diane is saying, I'm enjoying that look. Lots of water seems to be the key. Do you know what, Diane? You are absolutely correct. What I tend to find is that people paint far too dry. And actually, the wetter, the better. Because the water gives you more time to play about with it. Especially if you're working on a cotton paper like I am. So Saunders Waterford is designed to allow your colours to float on the surface. You want them to float on the surface. And so putting lots of water down gives you that time to slosh that colour on and to allow it to do the thing that it does best. Watercolour wants to have its own movement on the paper. It absolutely wants that. What else is saying? Pam is saying, with my glasses off, I'd miss the paper completely and decorate the table. Pam, you haven't seen my computer screen. It is covered in spatter and all sorts of things, usually the dog as well. Anne is saying that she likes a bit of sloe gin in the evening. It's good for sore throats. I may have to try that, Anne. So I'm giving this a blast of heat. I'm also going to give it a blast on the back. You may notice that I don't stick my paper down. I'm just going to turn this up a little bit. I don't stick my paper down. And the reason that I do that is so that I can access the back of my paper to dry it, to move it, to do other things with it. Elaine is saying, I like this with lots of water, a bit early for rhubarb gin though. Elaine, it depends where you are in the world. Now I'm going to give it a little bit of an extra dry on the front. It is nowhere near as dry as I would like it. But, so I've got a bit of a cauliflower going on here. Never mind, we'll do something with that later. But when you do yours, you're going to be able to have a lot more time and give it more attention than I am giving it. So let's just have a look at it. Yeah, it is kind of still wet around the edges, which is why I've got a little bit of a back run here. That's fine. In actual fact, let's just give it a quick blast. 10 seconds, bear with me. There we go, that'll do. And what I'm getting is, because I've used cobalt blue, you may recognise the bit of granulation going on here. So we've got some textural elements. There's another reason for me including that cobalt blue. Lovely Tara is saying, normal drinking rules do not apply during lockdown. Tara, I'm with you there, my lovely. Right, now can you see that even though things aren't particularly accurate, and okay, we've got green where the leaves are, and we've got grey where the wall is, and we've got some kind of pinks and things going on. What we do have now is a much easier map of where to build our painting up from here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. Let's get it in just a little bit more so that you can see it in a bit more close up. There we go. And you will see from that close-up that I can still see my pencil lines. Absolutely still see my pencil lines. So don't worry when you flood it with colour that your drawing is going to disappear. I can actually see mine quite clearly. And because I've got colour on everything, because I've kind of taken care of the background, I've kind of taken care of some of the more impressionistic techniques or the impressionistic marks, what I can now do is go back in with a slightly smaller brush and use this brush for some mark making to create some shapes. So let's start with our leaves. Now I'm going to use the sap green neat as it is, but I'm going to mix up some other colours too. So let's take some of that sap green because it's a bit bright on its own. That's all right. So there's some of that sap green. I'm going to mix some of my cobalt blue, which has got all sorts of other nonsense going on in it. So I get that sort of slightly smudgy green. And I'm also going to take some of that sap green over here. I'm going to mix some translucent grey in with it too. So I've got a lovely dark green going on as well. And again, all of these colours are now my pick and mix colours to work from. Let's start with those. Now, shall I start with those leaf shapes? No. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to start with the stems. And for that, I'm going to use some of my cobalt blue and quinacridone magenta mix, but probably more blue than pink. So you've got a bit of a lilac going on. Now this is a size 6 sable brush. No, glasses on. That's better. You can see what I'm doing now. Now I'm looking for some found shapes. And so what do I mean by that? We've got lots of lost shapes, haven't we? We've got the kind of fuzzy edged things going on. I'm now after a bit more structure in my piece. So I can be looking at stems or those where they're coming down to meet the tops of the flower heads. Maybe a bit of translucent grey on my brush too would be good. Ooh, maybe not that much, Ali. That's what your kitchen roll's for, just in case things like that happen. Coming down, back into that violet to get those stem shapes. You'll probably notice that I'm using my little finger to steady my hand. You could work across your wrist if you find that creates a steadier line. But I'm just kind of navigating my way around this now. Because what painting is a whole series of problem-solving techniques. You have to say to yourself, well, what is it that I want there? What do I want that to look like? And how am I going to achieve that? So you're kind of navigating your way around your piece, making decisions as you go. Try really hard to not make the decisions before you start. Because honestly, your painting is not going to match your expectations in that case. Try to make those decisions as you go along. So into my sap green and cobalt blue mix, and I can now start to make these leaf shapes a little more solid. And for this, I'm going to use a blending out technique. So I put a little bit of colour down. I take the excess moisture off on my brush, and then I pull or I smudge that colour across. I'm going to do that several times for you. So let's show you that again. So I've got my colour onto my brush. I make the shape with my brush, and then where I want the colour to be softer, I wet my brush, I roll it on the kitchen roll, and then just the tip of the brush goes back into that colour to move it. Now I need some more mixed up because I've used rather a lot of it, but let's slightly alter the colour mix so that this time it's got a little bit more blue in it. Then you don't end up with regimental leaves. So, ooh, I like that version of it. So we're going in. Steph is asking, can we watch this later, Ali? Yes, absolutely, Steph. If you go over to my blog, so you need to go to my website, alisonseaboard-fineart.co.uk/Ali's-blog, or just navigate to the blog in the menu. You will not only be able to watch this on catch up, but there you will find the photograph, the line drawing, the equipment list, everything you could possibly need for all your fuchsia painting extravaganzas. So I'm playing about with these leaf shapes and loving how that's coming together. Thank you, Barbara, for answering. Let's go for something a bit darker as well. Let's do a little bit of the whole wet into wet. So if we take some of that darker colour, we can find some areas of paint that are still damp, and we can drop some of those colours in. Ooh, look at that. Working very nicely. Thank you very much. So a bit of that cobalt blue back into the mix, and a scoopful of sap green. Oh, come along, come along, come along, come along. Let's tackle these leaves that are here. So coming down, I want these to have a little bit more detail in them, but I don't want to lose that impressionistic quality, so I'm trying so very hard to not overpaint. I'm kind of trying to move on. I tell you, one of the things that's really useful if you are trying very hard to not overpaint something is give yourself a time limit. Now you guys today are my time limit, because I can't be sitting here being terribly self-indulgent, and just kind of poking it around until I feel satisfied with it. You want to be watching me and seeing how it develops, and so give yourself a time limit exactly like I do. Ooh, that's a bit blue. Put some sap green in that. So you could put a timer on, you could set the clock on the oven, do whatever it takes to cut down on the faffing. That's exactly what you want to achieve. You want to kind of say to yourself, right, today I am not going to faff. I'm going to get on with it, crack on with it. And so we've got some little darker wet into wet shadows going in there. I might do some more to those leaves. Haven't quite decided yet, but for the time being, it's fine and dandy because I'm itching to get to these fuchsia shapes. Now I'm going to be brave with these. I'm going to go in with the quinacridone magenta, and it's fairly neat, fairly neat, because I want them to really stand out. So again, right, I don't want to paint over that nice little white shape that I've got there. Let's leave that, but we want the edges of it to be quite sharp. So I've got my lost in the kind of the blended out wishy-washy things that we did earlier, and I've got my found where I'm going back in and pulling some of that detail out. Let's try this one. I'm looking at my photograph. I'm looking at my photograph quite a lot, but I'm not kind of religiously sticking to it. If I can't answer a question about where the light is or the direction of the shape, then I'll look back at my photograph, but I'm trying to paint up the picture. Linda D is asking, the photo and drawing in today's blog seem to be the toadstool again, or maybe I'm going in too early. Linda, that's probably a link that has failed in me reposting. I promise I will go and sort that out as soon as I'm done here. My apologies for that. I thought I had sorted it out, but you know, technology, it likes to trip you up on occasion, doesn't it? I promise I'll go and sort that out as soon as this broadcast is finished. If you're watching on catch up, then the links will be there for you to download straight away. Now, coming into these petal shapes, I can afford for these petals to be super sharp because I want them to come forward. That looks better. And let's get this one done. Again, I don't want to paint over that lovely white shape that I've got going there, so we'll keep those. I don't really want this one to argue with this one either, so let's do a little bit less on there. Okay, that looks better. And then let's get this last little one in. Now, those of you that know me will probably have counted the fuchsia heads, because those of you that know me know that I can't do even numbers. My head actually explodes if I have even numbers of things. So I have got 5 little bits of pink. And that's got nothing to do with anything. That's just the way my brain works. Now, let's work on this violet bit. So I'm running out of cobalt blue. Colours aren't the same in their intensity in a tube. You will find that things like cerulean, that's a real one that you use up quite quickly. Cobalt blue is the same. It doesn't have the same intensity as quinacridone magenta, so you'll find that you need only a little kind of pinch of quinacridone magenta, but you might need a brushful of cobalt blue to create the colour that you're after. What I'm after is a delicious violet, because I want to get this lovely shape in here, the kind of inside of my fuchsia, and I want that to be nice and sharp. And what I'm going to do actually for the other side is, I've already got the violet on that I mixed up on my brush. I'm going to dip my brush into the translucent grey before I get the next bit in, so that I get a deeper version of it. So that, for those of you who are keeping score, is a technique called double loading. So you've already got one colour on your brush, and what you do is you go and sort of tip it in another one, and then that way you get the brush that you put down second comes off your brush first, and then you get the paler one further down. Denise is saying, love a delicious violet. What's not to like about a delicious violet? Now, these stems, I'm going to switch to my number 4 brush, and I'm going to try and do something else with these. I know that if I sit here and I get my fine brush and I paint them in all squeaky, all the way down, they're going to look over painted. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to deposit a blob of quinacridone magenta at the top, and I'm going to turn my brush around and I'm going to use the handle of it to bring that colour down. Why is that important? It's important because then hopefully it won't look over painted and I get a bit of a kind of scuffy texture to it. Again, that's the technical term for it. And then in the background I can kind of add some others too. Let's put one in the middle because that space is a bit devoid. And so I did the first ones carefully. These are a bit less careful, but you can probably see it's much nicer mark making. Good morning, Joe. Please don't apologise for being late. And good morning, Debbie, as well. Do I need to do anything else? Now, yeah, quite like that. What's going on here? This is a real kind of assessment period where you look at it and you go, what else do I need? I'm really, really strongly tempted to not do an awful lot else to this because it looks like a fuchsia. One of the joyful things about painting fuchsias is that you don't need to paint them all. They're a very recognisable shape, and so you don't have to work too hard to get them done. Jean is saying, I can only paint a maximum 2 hour stints due to arthritis. Thus, I love these small demos or lesson on DVD so I can stop and start. Hint, hint, Alison. Hint taken, Jean. Not a problem. Now, I think what I would like to do is to kind of add a few dynamic marks to this, because there's nothing like getting towards the end of a painting, and we are in the home straight now, and making some kind of marks in it that will say texture or structure or edges of things. And so what I'm going to do is use that sap green translucent grey mix that I had to go back in with my number 4 brush and to kind of mark make my way around it. Now, teachers, you will hear them talk about mark making all the time. And the reason that we do bang on about it incessantly is because it is the thing that sets your painting apart from somebody else's. It's your handwriting, if you like. It's the thing that describes one shape differently from another shape. And it's so, so important. It doesn't happen overnight. I wish it did. I would wish that for you. But you do have to practice. It's scribbling. It's using different bits of your brush. It's being expressive, all of that kind of stuff. Now, Anne is saying, oh, good morning, Rosemary. Please don't apologise for being late. Anne says, at what point does it become faffing? That is a really good point. And Susan, you're not wrong. It becomes faffing when you're doing it for absolutely no reason at all. And I know that that's semantics. I know that you could argue that you're always doing it for a reason. But I think if I'm honest, I have a little bell that goes off in the back of my head that goes, yeah, you're not really adding to it, Ali. You're just kind of messing about with it now. And I have reached that point. I've absolutely reached that point. And Susan is correct, because I do feel a spatter coming on. Because it's one of my paintings and it wouldn't be the same without it. Now, I need to spatter before I show you the final flourish. I'm going to spatter in a little bit of quinacridone magenta, just a little bit, just here and there. And I'm also going to spatter in some of the dark green. Denise would call this her palette colour, or her dregs, or the bits at the end of the palette. This is definitely my palette green, which I'm going to pop in. Now I need to give that a dry because I want to show you one last little thing with the Pearlex. Don't log off yet if you're watching live. I've got something else to show you. Let's give that a dry. Let's give that a dry. I will concentrate on the flowers being dry, just because that's where I want to put my last little flourishes. Let's give it a bit of a dry on the back as well. 2 seconds. So as a painting on its own, I'm not disliking it at the moment. It's kind of got lots of lost. It's got hopefully some atmosphere. Perhaps I could have brought the pink down a little bit further. Nah, that's another painting for another day. But what I definitely want to do is to show you a little technique to give your paintings some bling. Now to do that, I want to get in really, really close with my painting. I just need to do some rearranging. Excuse me a second so that I get this into shot. Now here is that Pearl-Ex powder. Now if you're not sure about what Pearl-Ex is, or you missed the beginning of today's demonstration, wind it back and I will tell you a little bit more about that. Tara, thank you, that's very kind of you to say. So I'm going to take the lid off my Pearl-Ex. I think it's probably wise to take the lid off my Pearl-Ex over the top of a bit of kitchen roll, just in case it decides to explode. Look at that. Isn't that lovely? Look at it in the lid. Is that just me getting excited about it? Now, the reason that I love this colour so much, I don't know if you can see in the camera, but it's called magenta, but it's got this kind of violet-y blue thing going on. Can you see that in the light? I'm trying to tip it so that my lights pick it up. And what it means is, maybe I'll use it from the lid actually. Let's pick a little bit out of here, pop some onto my little eyeshadow applicator, and let's use it from the lid. That's probably a lot safer. And what I'm going to do is oh no, took my glasses off, you see. Now I can't see again. Oh, look at that, there we go. I'm going to go back in and over the top, I'm going to dust some of this Pearl-Ex into my flowers. So it's kind of like a pastel technique, but what you should be able to see is just the tiniest bit of bling over the surface. Also covers a multitude of sins if you have made a bit of a boo-boo somewhere. So I'm getting, it's very subtle, it's really subtle. And what I will try to do over on the blog, as soon as this is finished, I will try to shoot this in extreme close-up so that you can see the shine on it. Let's do a little bit over the top of this one. I could have gone for some green as well, but as much as I love my bit of bling at the end, you don't want to overdo it. Now let's see if I get this into the light. Can I get it into the light so that you can see it? Possibly not, but take it as read. What I've got is this kind of lovely little sparkle at the end of my picture. And that's another reason for using that sort of technique, because it definitely, most definitely, stops me faffing about with it. So there we have the impressionistic version of my fuchsia photograph that I took when I was out and about on the road. So I really hope you enjoyed that. Obviously, this is my Technique Tuesday for Tuesday the 10th of November 2020. They are designed so that it keeps you being creative, and I would love to hear from you. I would love to see what you do with this project, how you run with it, where you go with it. And there's lots of places you can share your triumphs with me. You can comment on my blog. There is a little comment section on there, particularly if you have a question about it, because if you do have a question about it, it might not only be that you have the question, but somebody else might want the answer to it too. So pop the comment on my blog. Now also on that blog page is a link to my Learning to Paint page. So Learning to Paint with Alison Seaboard, it's my Facebook group. And if you go on there, you'll see all the toadstools that everybody did last week. They were amazing. And people really ran with it and used their own photographs and used mine and did bigger versions of it and smaller versions of it. And I would love to see your fuchsia paintings. Even if it doesn't work, I'd still like to see it, because it's all part of the process. If it doesn't work perfectly, please don't think that that's a failure. It's really not. It's like making a spelling mistake, yeah? You go back, you write it again, you move on. If your painting doesn't work, go back, alter it, turn it into something else, cut it up and use it for collage. Anything to keep you creative. We all need a bit of creativity in these times. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much if you tuned in live. Thank you if you're watching on catch up. My name is Ali Board. You can find me all over social media, Ali Board Artist. or you can pop over to my website, alisonseaboard-fineart.co.uk. And don't forget, if you know of somebody who is feeling a bit isolated, might want to start painting, or might just want to sit back for an hour with a cup of tea and watch somebody paint a picture, please do share away. This is all about keeping us safe, keeping us a little bit saner, and keeping us well. Next week, what am I doing next week? It's Duck Week. Next week, I've got a photograph of two rather beautiful ducks that I want to share with you. So we'll have a look at animal portraits next week. And I might sneak a bit of mixed media in there for you too. But until I see you next week, keep in touch during the week. Don't forget to keep sharing. I'm always lurking in the background. And if for any reason at all you feel that life is getting on top of you, please just message me. I might not get back to you straight away, but I will always be there for you, I promise. You take care of yourselves and take care of each other, and I will see you next week. Bye.